Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome viewers, we will be discussing about organizational theory, structure and design. First we will learn about the course outline, course objective. In a dynamic environment, organizations have emerged with unique designs and structures. Organizations adopt new business models, strategies and methods to be competitive and sustainable. Therefore, it is important to understand the nature of these organizations and their behavior, so that they can be responsive to environment, society and contribute to economic growth and address stakeholders' interest. This course provides a fundamental understanding of nature of organizations, history of management and relevant theories associated with organizational structure, strategy and design. These lessons will help learners get an overview to understand organizational dynamics and evolution of organizations with changing dynamics of business environment. We have a week wise lesson plan. With the week 1, we will be discussing about introduction to organizations, fundamental definitions about the organization and various design elements, perspectives of managers and researchers about an organization, their viewpoints and metaphors will be discussed, history and evolution of organizational theory. Week 2, we will discuss about organizational effectiveness and various approaches. Week 3, a discussion on determinants of organizational structure, strategy, structure, relationship will be discussed. Week 4, we will focus on business environment, environment structure relationship. Week 5, there will be a discussion on organizational design, choosing the right structural form. Week 6, the focus is on organizational design with close look at bureaucracy and adhocracy. Week 7, contemporary business issues in organizational theory will be discussed. Week 8, the focus will be managing organizational conflict, culture and organizational evolution. To begin with, we will discuss about the first lecture, that is introduction to organization and an overview. Organizational theory, structure and design will take an overview of the learning objectives, explain why organizations exist and the purpose they serve. There will be a focus on the description of the relationship between organizational theory, design and change, and differentiate between organizational structure and culture. Understand how managers and culture utilize organizational theory to design and change their organizations to increase organizational effectiveness. Identify how managers assess and measure effectiveness, appreciate the way contingency factors influence the design of organizations. So, first of all, we will also focus on why there is a need to study organizations. Organizations change is imperative, change is a reality. Business environment succumbs to dynamic factors, dynamic and competitive forces. Business environment is highly dynamic, vulnerable, uncertain, complex and ambiguous due to changing business situations, due to the changing preferences of customers, changing technology. So, the environment and an intense and rigorous competition. Nature of jobs have changed with advancement of technology, which requires new competencies to overcome the competency trap employees are in. Organizations need to change, adapt and learn, relearn to maintain continuity and order. Organizational design, strategy and structure need to fit with business environment. There has to be a strategic fit of organizations, design elements, strategy, structure and culture. So, strategic fit orientation will be discussed, where we focus on employee job fit orientation, employee organization fit and employee environment fit. What is an organization? Let us just begin with a fundamental definition of organization. It is a group of people who work interdependently towards common purpose, towards a purpose, a goal which is well defined. Structured pattern of interactions within people working in the organizations, the employees interact with each other in a group, there is coordination of tasks, activities and people have been allocated different responsibilities, and that can only be possible if all of them work in coordination with each other, work towards a common objective, have common objectives even if not fully agreed by all the members who are working in a group. So, to better understand the organization and its perspectives, we will be discussing about the perspectives of management researchers, practitioners about organizations. This will help us to arrive at a consensus about how organizations perform, how organizations fit with the environment and they respond and reciprocate with the changing perspectives of organizations environment. So, the organizations which have understood their business environment reciprocate with the changing dynamics and they evolve themselves and they grow, mature as well as they are sustainable. So, with this we have taken the viewpoints of several researchers from the past till date, how the viewpoints of management practitioners have changed, and we are arriving at a focal objective or a focal point of discussion about organizations. So, definition of organization emphasizes on an organization is made of people with specific goals and objectives. It is also defined as relationship among components of a system that binds people working in an organization. It is a system of consciously coordinated activities or efforts of two or more persons as defined by Chester Bernard, management consultant. Consciously coordinated system, consciously coordinated social entity with a relatively identifiable boundary that functions on a continuous basis to achieve common objective. So, there are certain key features of an organization. It is a group of people who are organized to achieve a common purpose. It is an entity, a unit or an establishment which utilizes resources to achieve common purpose. This shows structure of relationship among members of an enterprise, a process that enables people working in an enterprise to relate to the various tasks and facilities and helps them to achieve the intended objectives or goals of an organization. So, how do we define an organization? What is its purpose? Organizations provide goods and services. In a competitive business environment, just getting goods and services or providing goods and services will not serve the purpose unless there is a well defined quality, there is an innovation in the goods and services, innovative products, innovative services, use of fast cost minimized approach to serve the customers in a better manner. Organizations employ people, they bring together people and resources to produce products and services. So, the focus of organizations is not just working with people and within a well defined structure, but optimally utilize human capital as well as the resources to produce products and services, to offer quality products and services to the customers. As management perspectives differ and with evolution of time, there are different researchers who have given different definitions, who have given their views in differently, will be discussed further. Organizations are collections of people working together in a coordinated and structured fashion to achieve one or more of the goals. Barney and Griffin have given this viewpoint in the year 1992. Organizations are consciously created arrangements to achieve goals by collective means as defined by Thompson and Macau in 1995. Further, a new definition emerged in year 2001, organization as a social arrangement for achieving controlled performance in pursuit of collective goals, which has been given by Huzinski and Buchanan. So, conclusively we can say organization is a tool used by people to coordinate their actions to obtain something they desire or value. There are certain key functions of organization. It provides direction or strategy, or there is a well defined plan. Resources need to be provided and managed. There has to be focus on optimum utilization of resources with less or minimum of wastage. People management is another focus of organization. Employees responsible to the managers actually achieve the organizational objectives. So, with this different or divergent views of people about organizations, there are different perspectives also associated, which are otherwise called the metaphors of organizations, which have evolved with the period of time. Machine metaphor, which was a dominant view of 20th century when there was first industrial revolution. Machine metaphor is a dominant view in 20th century when there was a focus on industrial revolution. There were many machines, and the focus of the machine metaphor is how to get or obtain maximum productivity and optimum utilization of machine and human power. So, the people were considered as merely tools or cogs in the wheel, or tools to get the final finished products or the productivity of organizations. Then emerged another definition which was given, which was otherwise called living systems metaphor, which appeared in a world of turmoil. When the organization's environment was in a flux, there was a lot of factors in the business environment which had disturbed the business environment and its performance. So, this metaphor is called anthropomorphizing organizations or anthropomorphism, which considers organization as a living being. As the human being responds to the environment, when the environment is hot and humid, the living being give a different response, whereas in a cold climate the response is different. Similarly, organizations also have a different organization's response mechanism is similar in a living systems metaphor. Organization as a system, as we know that in any system there is an input, there is a process and an output. As in case of organizations, the organizations also take the resources from external environment, the tangible resources, the human capital procured from external environment is transformed through various processes, and a finished good or finished goods and services are meant for the consumers or the society. Cultural web. Organizations are also defined by a group of researchers as a cultural web with several elements intertwined or integrated with each other and appears to be like a cobweb. And political system. Organizations do also appear like a political system where there are dominant bases of power and politics existing, which may not be well defined in the formal systems, but they are intangible, they are present, they also interfere in the organizational performance. The last approach is organizational life cycle stages or life cycle theory of organizations. To discuss about the machine metaphor, as we have already said, machine metaphor emphasizes on organization is just very similar to a machine where you get inputs and you try to get maximum out of or optimally utilize the various elements of the machine to get the finished product. So, organization works as a living system. As a human being responds to its environment, similarly organizations also respond to their environment. As there are dynamisms in the environment, the factors in the business environment can be different, like the pestle factors, which talks about the political, economic, socio-demographic factors, technological factors, economic and legislative factors. These factors influence the organization, they disturb the performance of organization. So, any organization which would have thought of having or which has a well defined objective or goal So, the influence of these factors will disturb the performance. So, therefore, as a living being, an organization responds to these factors, these pressures, and transforms itself. So, learning from the inferences of the pestle factors, organization transforms, unlearns the past and relearns to make it functional again. So, which this viewpoint has been given by Gareth Morgan in the year 2003, which says that organizations have a different view, different perspective of like a living system, which is otherwise called anthropomorphizing organizations. Anthropomorphism is synonym for living system. A definition about organization as a system has been given by Senior in 1997, who says that organization appears to be like a system where there are inputs and processes through which organization transforms these resources and procures the and gets the finished goods which will be ready for consumption by the consumers at large. So, how does a system view work? The inputs are land, capital, machinery, human capital, and the resources and raw materials are transformed through various processes in the organization, which have a formal definition well defined in the organizational rules, regulations, policies and practices. There is also another definition of organizational subsystem, which is informal, intangible, which is not explicitly defined, but it is also there and it interferes in the processes of the organizational effectiveness. So, what is a formal system? Formal subsystem of an organization is called management, operations, technology, structure, goals and strategy. What is management? Management is otherwise defined as the planning, organizing, directing and controlling. When the organization has a well defined plan, a well defined objective, a mission and vision statement, the products and services, what to be produced, how many different types of or which market to serve, how many competitors are there in the market, how the product is different from the competitors. So, what would be the innovation strategy? All this is well defined in the plan if the organization has a well planned or has planned its how it will carry forward its functions. Then once the plans are in place, they will have an organization, they will organize their task with a proper structure, the chain of command, the division of labor and the responsibility is divided amongst employees and the task given to people based on their competencies. Further, there is also description about who should be directing and how the control mechanisms will be in place. So, leader will be given responsibility based on his competencies, based on his talent and efficiency, and further the control mechanisms like whether it is feed forward control, whether it is what type of technology is adopted so that the resources are optimally utilized. Operations talks about procuring the raw material from the warehouse, how to manage the inventory, logistics and supply chain management, maintaining quality and efficiency, Six Sigma and various control mechanisms, quantitative measures to get the optimum out of resources. There should be minimum wastage and optimum utilization of resources. Further, there is also discussion about technology. With evolution of each phase or progress of mankind, there is also evolution of technology. Technology is not the one which started with the very beginning of Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution 1 discussed about the mechanical power or the steam engines. The second Industrial Revolution talks about the electrical power, and further third Industrial Revolution focuses on automation in order to be more productive, more effective in its performance. The fourth Industrial Revolution discusses about the smart machines, smart technology, which is called Industry 4.0, where focus is on improving efficiency to have zero carbon footprints, to focus on environment consciousness and also be socially concerned. But the focus of Industry 4.0 is use of artificial intelligence, machine learning and cloud computing, and all these new technologies have evolved with a period of time, and also there is an impact on how organizations design their elements, how they structure their task, because the focus of the organizations have changed over a period of time. Further, the new industrial revolution or Industry 5.0 focuses on not the smart technology, but how machines have become more intelligent. It talks about man-machine interference or working in coordination with each other to make the industries more intelligent. So, the decision making has improvised with the period of time using new technologies. The next focus is on structure of the organization. As we have already discussed, management has 4 important functions: planning, organizing, directing and controlling. Organizing talks about how the task is organized. It also gives emphasis on the structure. When the plan is well defined, you have a well defined strategy. So, the focus shifts towards how the structure of the organization would be, what is the, whether it is a tall structure or a flatter structure, whether it is a bureaucratic organization, or the focus of organization is towards cost minimization, whether the focus of organization is towards a organic structure. So, what should be the focus of organization? This is decided based on the plans or the strategy or the goals. Then what is the goal of an organization? Whether it is a qualitative goal, whether you focus on the quantity of products or the focus is on quality, the focus is on innovation. What is the qualitative or quantitative goal? How it is well defined, so that people, everybody who is part of an organization, the employees get a clear understanding about the goals of the organization. Goals are well in place. So, these formal definitions bind people who are working in the organization towards a common objective. Strategy talks about the focus of or the plans of actions of an organization. What are the plans of actions? What is the focus? Like whether the concern is towards the multiple businesses the organization is in, or the concern is towards the business which they are, or the competitive industry in which they are in. So, whether what is the corporate strategy, what is the business strategy, what functional strategy do they have. So, what and how the organization is deriving its competitive strength, competitive edge over competitors. So, these are integral parts of the formal subsystem of an organization. The informal subsystem of an organization talks about the culture, politics, leadership, which is informal and not part of the formal definition, formal rules and regulations. These are intangible, these are omnipresent, these are there in the organization, all pervasive, but it is only felt. So, politics talks about the distribution of power, where the power lies. It talks about manipulation of facts. Culture talks about the shared beliefs, values, symbols, rituals, all these are shared and practiced by people from year on year. It is carried forward from one generation to another and forms a basis for a strong culture of an organization, and these are the employees who are part of a strong culture of an organization. They feel there is a sense of commitment, there is a sense of pride to be integrated with the organization. The leadership talks about who the leader is, who is at the helm of affairs and what is the style followed by the leader, whether it is autocratic leadership, whether it is a bureaucratic leadership style, whether the leader is having a people orientation, concern for profit, what is the concern and the leadership style, whether the leader is transformational or the transactional type of leadership style, which means that whether the leader is leading the organization with a direction towards development of people or towards movement towards objective of organization. So, the living organization as a system talks about the resources are procured from the external environment. the machinery, material, the human capital or human intelligence, and it is transformed, allocated different responsibilities, transformed through various processes in the organizations, and the final goods or services which are ultimate objective of organizations, they are meant for consumption by the consumers, by the society and other organizations. So, employee satisfaction is also one of the concerns of organizations. It is not just the customer satisfaction, but employees also need to be satisfied. So, and all this the definition talks about how a organization is responding to environment. There is interdependence of each part of an organization, each subsystem of an organization, and there is a coordination of various tasks and responsibilities. The next definition talks about organization as a cultural web. What is a culture? Culture talks about shared beliefs, values, symbols and rituals which are practiced by people year on year. There is a kind of transfer of these values, the stories, symbols, rituals, they travel from one generation to another generation to form an organization's identity and image. So, culture, every integral part of organization's culture which is closely intertwined with each other to form a cultural web, just like a cobweb, they are all related to each other and they give a unique identity to the organization. What are stories? The stories of the founders, how they have led the organization, what values they follow and how their values have reflected on the behavior of people who are working in the organization. To quote some examples, I would talk about Apple, Tata's, these are various, these are some organizations which have been sustainable and they have, and their existence is because of the stories of the founders have bound the behavior of people working in the organization. Apple's innovation is because of the vision of Steve Jobs. He talks about how he has led the organization coming up with innovative ideas much before the competitor could have ever thought of. Tata is built on the philosophy of his founders Jamshedji Tata, who has adopted the Parsi values, and based on this the concern is towards developing a workplace which has focus on development of people, concern for people. So, they consider the organization should give a response towards equitable response towards people who are working in the organization. People are given an equitable treatment. So, they work, there is a commitment from them and which impacts the performance and productivity of the organization. It is also giving a identity to the organization as most concerned towards employee or employee friendly organizations. Symbols, the symbols constitute of the buildings, warehouses, the artifacts, the buildings, then awards, award models which an organization has received for its past performance. The award models and the symbols become a sense of pride for people who are working with the organization, associated with the organization, which garners a sense of identity. People develop their identity with or associate with themselves with those organizations where they are working. Let us talk about certain award models. Like we have all heard about Global Make Awards, Global Most Admired Knowledge Economy. So, these awards are given to those organizations which have performed or which have been most innovative and knowledge centric organizations. There are few examples, or there are some organizations which have received these awards, like there are few more awards continuously. So, if an organization is achieving or is able to get these kind of recognitions like Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award or Tata's Business Excellence Award, or you have an award which is like say European Foundation for Quality Award, which is a kind of a merit, or the organization has been recognized for its merit or performance. So, these award models have always given a strategic importance to an organization, and those people who are working in these organizations, they feel very happy to be associated, they feel great and they feel a sense of pride to work with these organizations. So, how is the cultural web binding commitment from the employees? This is leading towards employees' commitment towards organizational goal attainment. Again, we discuss about the power structures. What is power structure? Long serving managers and the workforce. Those employees who are working in the organization for a longest duration, they also enjoy sense of association with the organization. Their presence, because they have been in the organization for a longer duration, they enjoy a group of followers or they influence. Because they are working in the organization for a longer duration, they enjoy a unique place or identity in the organization. People look towards them for their suggestions, for their decisions, their voice matters in the organizational decision making. Paternalistic style of management, emphasis on continuity, attitude, relaxed attitude of people, then cooperation at the head office, all these are parts of the power structure. Then organizational structure, hierarchy, whether the hierarchy is at the top management or there is empowerment at different positions. What is the bureaucracy, in the level of bureaucracy in the organization, responsibilities are well defined or there are responsibilities are very clear. So, this also is part of organization's culture. Control mechanisms, what is the control mechanism adopted? Error, what is the scope for withstanding or scope for or sensitivity towards error? Rituals and routines, walkabout management by walking around. I will discuss about an example where some managers who have been very close to their employees, they keep discussing the problems with the employees. There is a concept called management by walking around. If you are closer to your employees, discuss and be with them in their problems and you try to discuss, so that will help in resolving their problems. They feel at peace and there is it bridges the gap between management and employees. So, these factors also influence towards organizational performance. Yearly employee outings, how they share their moments of joy, lots of, if there is a lot of discussion or we call water cooler moments, there are discussions around. So, there is informal discussion in the organization which will ease out the employee's stress. So, organization as a cultural web is also helping an organization to understand various informal processes in the organization. The stories like successful projects, if it is discussed, knowledge is shared within the groups who are working. So, this will help in reducing the error, will learn people learn from each other in a better manner. New ideas can be discussed coming from all employees. Every employee gets an equal space and recognition for this develops their level of confidence. The awards received is shared, the stories of awards, the fun times celebrated together, the symbols like senior manager hold all inclusive or question answer sessions are being held. For example, in General Electric had given there are practices of workout sessions, workout meetings where the management and employees come together to discuss their problems. So, it helps in easing out or cleansing the system, and people people are able to discuss their woes regarding their own career enhancement, regarding several issues which they face in their workplace, which will help in improving their performance and ease out the stress level which they have. So, then we discuss about the power structures. Managers at all levels are empowered. Senior managers provide direction and support to the employees, whether the responsibilities are given in the top management or the responsibilities have been disbursed equally. Organizational structure talks about the project teams, their forms that are disbanded, flat, why the structure is flat, why there is one layer. So, all this discusses in details about the structure of the organization, control system, whether it is equal emphasis is given on monitoring customer satisfaction, budgeting processes, long term focus on achieving goals, rituals and routines, interdivisional working, what is the type of interdivisional working, decision making at all levels, awards and ceremonies, informal gatherings or discussions around the coffee table discussions, all these matter a lot towards organizational performance. So, there is a need to look at divergent views or different perspectives or metaphors. Next perspective is how an organization appears like a political system. Gareth Morgan in the year 2016 has given a perspective called organization is intrinsically political, in the sense that ways must be found to create order and direction among people with potentially diverse and conflicting interests. The idea of politics stems from the view where interests are divergent, people have a diverse perspective, society should provide a meaning of allowing individuals to overcome the differences through consultation and negotiation. Politics create social order, shared visions and understanding from diverse perspectives, interest and opinion. So, organization is also like a political system with different people having divergent views, different opinions, and there is also a conflict of interest. So, which will make the system a win-win, there has to be a win-lose system. So, the political system with different stakeholders and stakeholder groups having a different interest will sometimes disturb the organizations or create an imbalance in the organizational performance. So, an organization must give an equal space, understand the politics within the organization, and with understanding the problems, they can create a clear line of commands, clear guidelines to create a social order and which will make the organization be effective again. So, there is discussion on power and politics. What are the sources of power in an organization? Legitimate power talks about the power which has been given to an employee based on the position, which is genuine and which comes through authority. Reward power, coercive power, expert power and referent power. These are different forms of power. Legitimate power comes with authority, reward power, reward and punishment, coercive power. If somebody is in a power, is an authority, or he or she can punish or reward an employee. Expert power comes through the knowledge and expertise or in a particular domain based on the subject knowledge or expertise or proficiency in a particular role. Referent power, when somebody is exceptionally good in a particular section, in a particular task. So, he is always referred to for any suggestion or decision making. So, the people who have power, they have an ability to influence or control over the lives of others, provide power over others. There are contingencies of power because of scarcity of resources, centrality, importance and visibility. So, power, the potential sources of power as given by Jan Brooks in 2017, power at departmental level derives from potential sources like when there is dependency on each other, or when there is a centrality or somebody is holding a central position, there are financial crunch or non-sustainability or say coping with uncertainty. When there are uncertain situations, in order to cope with uncertainty, you also have to like there is a need for depending on. Power at departmental level derives from 5 potential sources: dependency, centrality, financial sources, non-sustainability and coping with uncertainty. The most successful leaders use mostly referent and expert power. To develop leadership ability, it is important to build these types of power so that leaders can have a positive influence on their colleagues, team and organization. What happens when there is power or the power is exercised by these sources of power, or power is exercised by people? Expert power and referent power. When somebody has knowledge power, when somebody has a specialized or somebody has an expertise on a particular task, this will lead to commitment. When you have control over somebody because of your expertise, because of your knowledge, because of your skill. So, you are controlling the behavior of other individuals because they are depending on you on your knowledge for learning or for developing themselves to solve problems. So, this expert and referent power will lead to commitment. Legitimate and reward power. When an individual has a power, legitimate power because of authority, because of position, and he has also the power to reward an individual, then the other individuals or a group of people will comply with that comply with the rules and regulations, will comply with the goals and objectives. Coercive power is how you reprimand another individual based on the position that you hold. There would be resistance. Most of the organizations, when something is forced, when there is a punishment, there is a revolt from the followers, from the employees. Reasons for politics. Competition for power is required to grab limited resources. As we know, the resources in the organizations, the positions or the resources like the finance and any other resource which is used by the organization, the resources are scarce and limited. So, there is always, and everybody wants to grab the resource, the limited resource. So, in order to grab resources, there is always use of power either by force or by any means. Authority. Organizations provide discretionary authority to certain people. They use it at their individual judgment and create organizational politics. When there is chaos, when there is ambiguity, when the roles and authorities are not clear in the organization, politics develops. Because there is no clarity of thought, there is no well placed guidelines. So, there would be the confusion leads to more of politics. Promotion is another reason for politics. When an employee reaches his saturation point in his talent and skill, promotion is another reason for politics. When an employee reaches his saturation point in his talent and skill, establishing clear politics and chain of command makes it easier for workers to find answers they need and spend more time to give best results. A climate focused on teamwork and equal treatment prevents clash that can reduce output. Further, we discuss about organizational life cycle theory. As a human being has a life cycle, as an infant grows to an adult and further grows into a mature individual, and there is aging and decline. Similarly, the same phenomena is experienced by organizations in their life cycle stage as introduction, growth, maturity, decline and death. The organizations which are sensitive towards the organizational demands, customers' changing preferences, changing technology or the competitiveness in the dynamic environment, they are more responsive and they change accordingly. They change, adapt, learn, unlearn the past and move ahead. So, those organizations are highly sustainable. They are sustainable, they are learning and moving ahead. I will speak about organizational life cycle theory. The first stage is idea conception, where the organization is just starting. So, in the idea conception stage, the resources are limited, scarce, and then in the infancy stage, next stage is infancy or startup stage, where the organization is within the founder's trap or within the ideas of the founders, is not able to think differently beyond the founders' ideas. The third stage is go-go or random expansion, where the founder emphasizes on expansion, and at times there is over expansion, random expansion, and next is split between founders and administrators. When the organization keeps on expanding, there is one stage where the structure of the organization has also evolved, the size of the organization has also changed, because it is not just within the limits of the founders' principles or the founders' conception. Now, they have moved ahead, adolescent stage, getting organized or trying to be more focused with the support of split between founders and administrators. The next stage is prime stage or the premature aging, where the focus is on continuous or continuous change, reorganizing, optimizing and innovating. The next stage is maturity, or where the organization has matured, there is no diversity, they have reached a saturation point, which is where the organization has to develop a consciousness towards change. Then next stage talks about resting on our laurels. So, there are certain challenges an organization faces where they live on their past history, they just rest on the strong culture, the laurels of the past, early bureaucracy or too much of excessive bureaucracy, red tapeism, and which leads to decline and death. Those organizations will be successful if they have been more sensitive, adaptive towards change, towards the demand of the new environment, towards responsive towards the organization, if they have understood what is the changing preference of customers, what is the new technology, they will be more adaptive and they overcome the competency trap. They try to think or review, revisit their structure, strategy and evolve with a new organizational design. Those organizations are highly sustainable. There are several examples. The business environment is flooded with several examples of sustainable organizations. Let us just summarize organizations' life cycle stages and the challenges. The challenges in the startup stage of organizational life cycle is building a customer base. To develop a customer base, setting up processes and systems, managing and allocating resources. And in the growth phase, the challenges are managing change and expansion, how to adapt, learn and change, maintaining quality as the demand grows. Though the focus of organizations is towards productivity and performance, but we need to be conscious about how to produce quality products, provide good quality of service, developing a competitive advantage over the others, but maintaining the quality and also giving emphasis on effectiveness. The maturity stage, market is more saturated, sustaining innovation, giving innovative products to the market is a challenge for organizations. Cost consciousness should be another focus. In the decline or the renewal phase, employees resistance to change. People resist to change because there is a habit of being in the comfort zone. So, they do not want to budge from their sense of complacency, finding the root cause of slowing growth and identifying new opportunities for growth. So, organizational life cycle and future managerial decisions, the organizations need to be more entrepreneurial, dream and do it. Stability emphasizes on focus on putting on the structure to support past growth. Being resilient, organizations need to be very flexible, resilient, adaptive practices that start to focus on the organizations outward, and then there has to be focus on innovation. What is the next line of thinking? Think much ahead of your competitors. To summarize the lecture, we have discussed about a broad overview of the definition of organizations, perspectives of management researchers, practitioners about organizations, how an organization work as a social entity to achieve their goals and objectives, and lastly, we discussed why managers need to understand organizations and the various metaphors to predict the impact of business environment on organizational performance and effectiveness. Thank you.